Peace and grand rising to the sovereign, original, indigenous, natural divine heirs. Today is June 30th, 1442 on the ancient moon calendar, 1441 on the ancient sun calendar, and 2021 on the Greco-Roman calendar. And I believe it's 5782, I believe, on the ancient Jewish calendar. And 5782 is how many years from 6,000 years? Do the math. That's the expiration of the time period for our creation, who was used as a tool to bring us into to assist us in being our God self. So we were talking just before the recording started. We'll just stay right on that topic about the liens, and the court actions and the results that we've gotten from them. Justice Dawood, if you want to just repeat what you said earlier about what happened when you liened someone who was pretending to own something on our land. I don't even know where they get that from, that they own anything. I don't know. Justice Dawood, are you there? Hopefully he's still. Let me see. I'm hoping he didn't get. Okay. You can star 6 if you can, Justice Dawood. Hopefully you can hear me. And then if there's any noise in your background, otherwise, if you would please star 6 so that everyone can hear. There's just 1 or 2 coming up on the sound meter. Okay, Justice Dawood has others on the line with him, so they're probably doing what they do as far as being on the line together. But we had report after report after report coming in of what happens when we lien those that are acting in a corporate capacity. And the purpose of the lien and the court actions is to do what they were doing with their corpses. Put them in debt. Put them in debt. See, we're actually adding to our line of credit. And when I say our line of credit, we have unlimited credit, but we're adding to it every time we do a lien and court action. And so some say, well, what does our credit look like? There is a number that the hybrids used to previously put up. They used to have signs all over our land, and it had this really long number. It was called the national debt. And it was like the last time I saw that number, it had something like 32 digits or something like that. And the clock was still ticking, and the debt was still going up and up and up and up, the national debt. And the national debt is something that the hybrid, the United States Corporation Company, ran up doing things on paper, because that's the only place they exist is on paper. But they ran up their debt, because see, we don't have debt. They ran up their debt, and then they put it on top of things that were being built and roads that were being put in and buildings that were things that were being done on our land. And they would attach a value to it and add it to that debt on their paper. Everything that was done on the land belongs to the heirs. Their paper belongs to them. That's how come we have no debt. And we own, everything is ours. We're the heirs to everything. So that number had about 32 digits or something like that, and it was, you know, running up every second. It was putting on more and more debt. That number, where did that number come from? It came from the public record. It came from the tax assessor record. They put all, see, this is the thing that many do not understand about the public record. The public record is anything out there that the public can see. Anything out there that the public can see. There is a system that calculates everything that's put on the public record. Every time something is put on the public record, that calculation, it increases. See, we think that everything is disconnected. Nope, everything is connected. Everything is connected. And anything that becomes the public record, such as Facebook and YouTube and all these other platforms, GMEI utility is a public record. Everything that's on the GMEI utility website, that's the public record too. It's a part of that number, the national debt. And anything that's done by the quote-unquote Federal Reserve Corporation and the United States Treasury Corporation and all of these bank corporations that were previously operating on our land, because we've liened all of them. And we see what's happening there. All of them, every move they made was calculated into the national debt. Right? So when we started doing the liens and the court actions, it caused them to look and see, okay, does this go on to the national debt or does this go on to their credit? The answer is both. We debted them and we use gold and silver, so that's our credit, right? So then they just took the number away. We couldn't see the number anymore of the quote-unquote national debt. We couldn't see that number anymore, or at least it wasn't made public anymore. They took down all the signs, you know, and you didn't see that number ticking and ticking and ticking. And you may be able to find the number up until maybe 2019 or something like that. But in 2019, they put something out there on the public record saying we stopped the national debt clock in 2019. And I spoke about that on one of the calls back around that time, because I found it interesting that they said stop the clock. And I knew why. So it was because the liens had started. Moors were leaning, and they couldn't keep up. And that's why we were sending it to D.C., sending the liens to D.C. And then COVID happened for them, not for us, for them. And it shut down D.C. So then we said, okay, just keep putting the liens on the public record. And if you want to send it to D.C., you can, but many of the Moors were getting their liens back saying no one there to deliver it to, you know, no recipient available or whatever to deliver it to. So then we said, okay, just put it on the, make sure you do what we've always been doing, which is put everything we do on the public record. And that's where that number just kind of like blew up. And then what happened is, remember, everything that the Federal Reserve Corporation and the bank corporations and the Treasury corporations do was a part of that number. So then they started talking about something called quantitative easing. Quantitative easing is where they say, okay, we cannot keep up with the debt that's going on, so we're just going to have to print money, quote unquote money. It's not money, it's fiat. It doesn't have any value. It's a number, a paper number. Because again, we said everything on our land must be accounted for, down to the forks, the spoons, the tissue, everything on our land has to be accounted for. So the corporations, those three corporations, Federal Reserve, Treasury, and the banks. And the banks, you can consider that the citizens. Or you can consider the citizens as under the Federal Reserve or the Treasury Corporation. So the Federal Reserve then said, okay, the Moors have been leaning. We can't keep up with the debt. We're going to have to just go into quantitative easing. Quantitative easing means there's such a large quantity of debt, and we need to ease some of that or do something to balance it until the Moors start using their credit. We need to do something to balance it so that, because if one side of the ledger on our vast estate gets overwhelmed and the other side is not being used, that's out of balance. In accounting, those who are accountant scientists know that the ledger has two sides, the creditor side and the debtor side. So the Federal Reserve said, okay, we're going to have to print. And by printing, they just got out the printer and got out the computer and started adding zeros in and putting digits into the computer. So then the Treasury said, well, the Treasury Corporation said, well, why don't we do this? We're going to start everything that you do, every penny that you put in there, we're going to create bonds for what you put in there to ease this side of the ledger. So whenever the Federal Reserve Corporation would make a move, the Treasury Corporation would print bonds. Well, what did you just do when you printed the bonds? You just doubled whatever debt the Federal Reserve Corporation just printed up out of nowhere. You just doubled the debt. Your debt, not ours. And then when the Treasury Corporation would print up the bonds, the Federal Reserve would print more to buy the bonds from the Treasury Corporation. And then, and see, for a while, the Treasury Corporation used to be able to sell those bonds to other quote-unquote countries, corporations. Bank of International Settlement, International Monetary Fund involved, and then they would get those out to the other country corporations. But the country corporations, they don't have that kind of debt to even give, so the Federal Reserve was like, okay, we'll just print it. Because all of the country corporations were given fiat too. So the Federal Reserve would print more and buy the bonds from the Treasury Corporation. And then they would say to the banks out there, okay, you all need to buy these bonds from us. And when you buy the bonds from us, whatever we're gonna give you the money to buy the bonds from us. We're gonna give you the money, the fiat. Sorry, not money, fiat. We're gonna give you the fiat to buy from us. And that's where you heard of corporations buying their own stock. Because the stock was being printed, that's bonds and debt being printed by the Treasury and going through the Federal Reserve. And so the banks would then say, okay, and the reason that the banks had to be involved is because the banks used to operate off of the reserve that they held that was the product of capital that they raised. The banks used to be able to just raise, quote unquote, raise capital. Well, what do they mean by raising capital? They mean anytime one of us, Moors, has anything to do with a bank, quote unquote, the corporate bank. Anytime we swipe that card and something goes through that corporate bank, a bond was created. And that would be consent, okay? And again, Moors, don't change a thing. Just keep doing what you're doing. Just hear me out. The Treasury would then create another bond for that. The bank would say, here, this is in the system, and create another bond for that. And then when we started terminating corporate contracts, the capital decreased significantly because we're the only capital well, we're not capital. But when in our sleep we thought we were capital, and they treated us like capital. Capital is the black name, black ink and capital letters that they shift debt around with. The Federal Reserve Corporation was overseeing the capital, those agreeing to be slaves. And then the ones that were known as depositors at the bank was the foreigners. And we all know, and even according to bank records, that depositors, those listed as depositors, and they're not listed as capital, they're listed as depositors, that deposit is a liability for a bank, okay? But the capital, which creates the reserve for the bank, that was considered the quote-unquote asset. Well, that was Sleepy Moors. That were the assets. So then they would create a certain amount of, the Federal Reserve would print up some fiat and say, this is your reserve based on the capital that you have. The Moors, thinking we're capital and black names and all of that. So whenever we started terminating corporate contracts, the banks didn't have the capital anymore, which affected the reserves that they could hold. Capital and reserves, there's a direct correlation between them. And so when we started terminating the corporate contracts, the capital went down for them. They didn't have any standing wealth, nothing to produce more debt with, no consent to be debt. So then the Federal Reserve said to them, okay, we're going to call all the banks together at Jackson Hole, Wyoming Corporation, all the bank heads together, and tell them that you don't have to have any more reserves on the books. See, the reserves is what the bank corporations would use in the event that there's a run on the bank and the depositors come in and say, we heard the bank is failing, I need to get all my fiat out. They would use the reserves to pay them. And then go out and look for more capital. In other words, capital is just contracts that the Moors signed thinking that we were citizens. And guess where they would pull their capital from? The prison industrial complex. So every time someone was pulled over, every time someone was put in jail, every time any of the Moors anything was going on with us and fake courts and fake policy enforcers, they would upload that into the system and say, oh, we got another signature. They signed this ticket. They signed this bond. And they're like, okay, so keep an eye on them because we're going to need to bring them back into the system again real soon because we running low. We're going to have to bring them in real soon. and get some more contracts because we need some more capital to hold on to the reserves that's in the bank. So then when the Federal Reserve saw that we were terminating corporate contracts, they called all the banks together and said, okay, you don't have to have any reserves, zero reserves. In other words, when the depositors come in and if there was a run on the bank, they wouldn't get nothing. Nothing, because there's no reserves, because the capital that they use, the Moors woke up and said, wait a minute, we're not any name in capital letters in black ink. Let's go ahead and leave them in our proper status in red in all lowercase letters. Let's not be capital. Because if you'll notice, all war rants, all court, those fake court war rants and tickets that the policy enforcers were giving and all of that stuff is in black ink in capital letters. No one can deny that. All you got to do is look. It's right there. Why do they keep doing that when there's other colors of ink? There's a reason. Because that's how debt is transferred back and forth. So every time they would do that, and that is also why when people were getting quote-unquote tickets in the last at least 3, 4, 5 years, they wouldn't just give one, they would give 3 and 4 and 5 in one sitting, one stop. They would give 3 or 4 or 5 tickets in one stop. They needed capital from the Moors. I know one more, and I won't say her appellation, you know, but she mentioned it out on the public record. They gave her in New York Territory 15 tickets in one stop. 15 in one stop. And this was a couple of years back. They needed some capital, and then they would create a bunch of, they could take one ticket of any one of us consenting to be capital. They can take one ticket, and they can create so many derivatives from the ticket. The one autograph of the Moors, that's how valuable we are, even in our sleep. They can create so much debt from one ticket, it's just unbelievable. They can create 30, 40, 50, 100 derivatives. They could do that previously. So whenever they would issue something like that, it would go up into the system and the Federal Reserve would say, okay, we're getting more capital, and then the prison industrial complex and those fake courts and all of that, that's why they had so much, quote unquote, perceived authority and power on the land. Because they fed the beast as long as we consented for that. So the Federal Reserve looks in the system and says, okay, we got more capital, let's distribute it to the banks. And that way the banks and the corporations can continue to thrive and grow. And again, if you can take one ticket and create 50 derivative bonds, then you can give a whole bunch of sandwiches out to these corpses. A whole bunch of them, but with just one sleepy Moor signature. And that's another reason why you would see the hybrids and they would pull them over and not issue them nothing because it wasn't worth nothing. That's why it was so easy for them to be like, well, I'm not coming to court, quote unquote. They could get out of all kinds of stuff. Why? Because there's no value in that corpse dead system. They're part of the corpse debt system. We're not. So this is where the debt is just swirling around on the land and growing and growing and growing. But now, when we terminated the corporate contracts, we'll go back there because I just wanted to tell you where all this debt is just swirling and swirling and swirling. And it's because we were giving consent. And then when we stopped giving consent, the banks and the corporations, had to find some way to keep the charade going. Okay, they had to find a way to keep everybody calm, keep everybody calm. So they said, okay, we're going to have to start printing capital, quote unquote, but it's not really capital because the Moors didn't consent to it. So we can only shuffle it around between us. We can't include the Moors in this because they don't consent to be capital. So we can't pass this debt to them. And that's why you hear the citizens talking about it's going to take us, they're creating debt for our children and our grandchildren. We'll never get out. That's what the United States Corporation Company citizens were saying, and they were, we got to get the debt down. The government has to do this. This is their government, corpses, corpse speak. So, because if we don't agree to any debt, then if they stay in that corpse status, they're responsible to pay it because somebody got to pay. And so the Federal Reserve Corporation said, okay, we're not getting any, the heirs have already said no more. They said no more debt on their land and all of that, no more. So they said, well, we can't just let everything fall. We can't let the stock market just crash because we can't just let the banks fail and all of that. That's why they were using that term too big to fail. We can't just let everything fall all at once. So let's just let it fall in stages and phases. And we'll just hide whatever it is that's falling and still kind of put a facade in front and make it look like everything is still the same, but it's not. And the way you'll know that it's not the same is you have to know what the foundation of what they were doing looked like. Because some people go out and they say, well, everything still looks the same. They're in the crypt already. It's a wrap. So the Federal Reserve said, okay, we got to do something about the debt that was out there. We have to take care of that too, because the heirs have said they're not going to be debt and capital anymore. They reverted the estate back to them. And so we're going to have to create more fiat to buy the bonds that have been created by the corporation. Because the corporations created a bunch of bonds, and someone has to, the bonds, we can't just burn them. They have to be accounted for. So all the bonds that are out there that the Treasury created, Treasury Corporation created, the Federal Reserve said, okay, how do we do this? What do we do? Okay, this is what they do. The Treasury was holding all these bonds that the corporations doing business as China and all of that. They said, we're not buying any more of that stuff. We see what's happening. The Moors have said they don't want it. We're not going to buy any more. So y'all going to have to do something with what you created. So the Federal Reserve said, well, okay, we'll just start circulating it between us and the banks and the corporations. The Federal Reserve, that's their us, not the Moors. The Federal Reserve Corporation, the United States Treasury Corporation, the bank corporations, and the citizens. So we'll try and switch this off on the citizens as often as we can, as much debt as we can. Then after a while, the Federal Reserve said, okay, we're going to have to start buying up everything because they're standing up to citizens too. And when the citizens are stood up as subject to the Moors, then their debt goes away too. because the Moors and anyone under the protection of the Moors can't have debt. There's no debt. There's no such thing because they're the creditors. The Moors are the creditors, and any of their subjects, their debt goes away, even though the subjects are not the creditors, because they agreed and consented to be subject to the Moors. There's no more. There's no more debt for them either. So I'm gonna go ahead and unlock the meeting. I believe there's Moors trying to get in. So the Federal Reserve is buying bonds from the Treasury because no one else will buy them. And every time the Federal Reserve corporation creates fake money to buy the bonds from the Treasury corporation, it creates more bonds because every move the Federal Reserve makes creates a bond. The Treasury has to create a bond for it. So then the banks are saying, well, what about these bonds that we have over here called stock? Because this is debt too, and we don't have any reserves or capital. So then the banks would take their bonds and shift them up and take them to the Federal Reserve window and say, can you give us some fiat for these bonds called stock? Because we created some more and we need to get that off of our books. It needs to keep moving. We got to keep it moving or else we're going to fall. We're going to crash. And the Federal Reserve would print more fiat at their window and hand it to the banks and say, okay, give us all your debt. And we don't give you some debt, but it's just fiat debt. And every time they did that, and the banks went back with fiat, the banks would then loan whatever they got from the window, the Federal Reserve window, they would loan it to each other to keep each other afloat overnight. Loan it to them. So Bank of America Corporation would loan it to Wells Fargo Corporation. They'll say, I went to the Federal Reserve window and I got some fiat for the bonds, the initial bonds, the stocks. So I'll loan you some. I'll loan you $500 million overnight, but then tomorrow you pay it back. You just give it back, give us back the same $500 million, which is paper. It's debt. And every time they did that, it would create a new bond. But then they would take it and buy their own stock back, which created more bonds. That's more debt. That debt would then be handed back up. And this is the upside down inverted pyramid scheme for them that they've been doing. They've been juggling and dancing and juggling and dancing and juggling. And every time new bonds are created, that's more debt. And then the Federal Reserve would try and find ways to do something with that debt, and creating securities, etc. Yes, in the chat. I see all the things that are being put in the chat. It's beautiful. Yes, Empress Bond put that in the chat. The banks act as a country on their own policy. That's true. Whenever you're creating debt and you're creating fiat, that is a hypothecation of Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution about using gold and silver as payment and coining money. So yes, they're acting as the state, quote unquote, when they do that, which is unlawful. So it's a vicious And again, Moors, listen, every time they do that, and they've been doing it now, it went from being 24 hours a day to we're just going to keep doing it. We're just going to keep doing it. We're just going to keep doing it, and the debt is growing exponentially. Well, think about this, because this was the point of all that I just told you. Every time they do that, on the reverse side, on the other side, reversion of the state. Think that. On the other side of the ledger is the credit. And the credit is just growing and growing exponentially because the Moors started leaning first. We had to. And doing court actions. So they had to find a way to account for all of that, and then that threw them into an eternal loop that creates debt exponentially automatically, which is our credit. That's what accepted for value is we're saying, okay, they created all of that debt. They said that this domicile was worth 40 million, and this domicile was worth 180 million, and this domicile was worth, all of that's on the public record. It's part of that quote unquote national debt. So when we say, okay, we do the processes, Moors, do the processes as the creditor, because we can't speak in black ink and capital letters and claim to be the creditor, because that's how they talk. That's crypt speak. Crypt, C-R-Y-P-T, Justice Theodore, yes. This is Tales from the Crypt. So we can't speak like they do, or they'll be like, okay, this is another debtor. We need to collect the debt. Let's collect it. This is debt. That's how they know. So our credit is growing and growing and growing and growing and growing exponentially. We're going to need it. We're going to need it because we got so much work to do and so much to claim. And that's why I put what I put on the screen about the wealth of the wicked is laid up for the righteous. The righteous in the biblioteliotext, because see, the biblioteliotext is a hypothecation of the ancient writings that our ancestors did. When the biblioteliotext talks about, being born in sin, it's referring to those fake birth certificates and those fake Social Security numbers, that stuff in black ink and capital letters. That's what it's referring to. All our sin as a nation and as a people, earth-wide, was going into capitalism and pretending to be the dead for a benefit that was already ours. But there's a reason we went through that. It was so that we could get to where we are now and never, ever, ever make that mistake again. Never make that mistake again. You see what we're doing to uplift fallen humanity, which is us first and then everyone else. We're having to get through these documents and learn and do the science on everything that we need to do. We got to do the science on all of it so that we can properly reclaim our credit. And that is why we're doing what we're doing with the domicile piece, where we have our Moorish scientists doing the research and tearing apart the real estate piece. Empress today is doing that, and there are other Moors that are lending their expertise in that area as well. That's part of proper reclamation of our vast estate. Okay, that's what that is. And so we have to do the science on proper reclamation of everything like that. We have to peel it apart and then clean it up and put it in red and all lowercase letters on our sovereign government affidavit. We're doing that for property. We see it working already, and we put it out on the public record how that works, where with the building here at our territory, when we did the documents in red and all lowercase letters and said, okay, that's ours, that we were tested in February, and by the time we finished our 10-day test, it was a 10-day test. By the time we finished our test, and it was actually 11 days because it was from the 8th to the 19th. By the time we finished our 11-day test, they had cleared the building and gotten everything out of it. And I don't know if everything is out because I haven't been in to do the inspection yet. But that's because we're taking this at a pace that is competent, strategic, and intelligent. We already know it's ours. It's marked vacant clearly on the building. We've put our documents in. We're looking at the process and learning. The building ain't going anywhere, and neither are we. We already know who's going somewhere, and it ain't the Moors. So we're taking the time to put the process and protocols together lawfully. And then we take another step. It has taken us 3 years. 3 years. But that was prophesied more. That was in the prophecies when they talk about the Great Tribulation. The Great Tribulation is just the great testing of the Moors. According to the Circle 7, Chapter 1. The Bibliopeliothek and the Circle 7 they work in tandem. They say the same thing. The Great Tribulation, but see, the hypothecated Bibliopeliothek is speaking from a place of fear, where everyone's supposed to be afraid of the Great Tribulation. Oh no. And it is our greatness. This is the time of the revealing of our greatness, to show who we really are. This is the revelation for the Moors. So testing is a beautiful thing, because we get to show that, yes, we actually are the God. Period. We didn't even go to Yale for this. Moors, look at all that we know. We didn't even go to Yale for this, and we're just getting started. We've learned so much. I've learned more in the last 3 years than I knew my whole time on this plane here, in this form. So the Circle 7 talks about it. A soldier never knows his strength without a foe. And of course, we're our own foes. The foe is just the ignorant, the not knowing. And we've always known, we just needed to tap in to our insight. So that is how all of this works. We have to keep leaning. We're going to keep leaning and keep doing court actions. Justice Dawood spoke about it before the call started. He's got them begging to remove the lien. Well, you know, no. 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 Not only don't remove the lien, but go ahead and do an acceptance for value for whatever it is you liened. Look on the public record and see what they're saying it's worth, whether it be a structure, an apartment complex, a domicile, whatever it is. Look on the public record, see what they say it's worth, and then do an affidavit for credit, accepted for value document, and put it on the public record. And we did a video on affidavit for credit accepted for value. And when you look on the public record, it's going to show you, they'll say that, you know, in the tax assessor records, it will say the market value of the land is this and the market value of the structure is that. Okay, we'll accept that for that value. We'll use our credit and accept that for value. So, but let me say this more, because I feel it's necessary to say it. You know, we've heard Moors saying, Moors need domiciles, we need a place to stay. And that's true. For many Moors, they consider themselves homeless, but you can't be homeless on your own land. But this is one thing that the ancestors want us to keep in mind, because it's a thin line, okay? So know that what I'm about to say has nothing to do with don't go get domiciles. Yes, go and claim domiciles sovereignly and allodially. Do that for sure. That must be done because they're on our land. So we might as well claim them. But claiming a gigantic domicile so that we can go sit in the domicile and get comfortable and throw parties that's not the goal. And if that is the intention for claiming the domicile, you can best believe that the ancestors will clean that intention before the domicile arrives, before you claim it properly. The ancestors mean for us to govern this vast estate first before anything else, because you can't secure a domicile if the government is not in agreement with that. And the ones that we thought were the government, the fake corpses, were not in agreement with the Moors going out there and everybody living well. We got proof of that. Our government, as the Moors, all Moors are the government. Our government wants us all to live well. So now that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing, we're in agreement with us living well. So then you'll be able to keep what you get when the government is in place and secure, we just have to keep doing what we're doing. We're in place, been in place. But governing the vast estate must be our top priority at all times, and doing so in unity must be the top priority. And that is why we chose the building to actually do the demonstration. Yes, we leaned Bill Gates and, you know, the one that was doing business as a corpse, Bill Gates. We leaned the domicile and the company and all of that, and you see where that happened. What happened with that? They've moved out of it, domicile, and it's waiting for us to keep the processes going. But that's not the goal. The goal is not for me or any more to go and sit up in a gigantic domicile and throw big parties for everybody and let the estate go ungoverned or be governed by corpses. That's not the goal, and it can't be the goal. The goal must be the standing of our government at all times. That is done by lien, court actions, affidavits, etc. That's how that's done. And those must continue. Hold on just a minute. Let me see. Can I get that out of here? How did that even happen? Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, all that you're putting in the chat is just beautiful. It is a balancing of the scales. See, Libra is in our energy input portion. What you put there, that's brilliant. It's the balancing of the scales. But Moors know this too, that we have to know how to get past them fake policy enforcers and fake judges before domiciles can even be conveyed to us properly. And buildings can be conveyed to us. That's what the testing is all about. If you got a giant domicile and the policy enforcers knock on the door and you don't know how to not answer the door or, you know, do a court action on them, and they kick the door in and take the domicile, what have you done? What good is the domicile if it can easily be taken? The testing and proving ground is right where we are right now. That's why we chose the building that we chose. Now, we got other stuff going on because and when I say other stuff going on, we've got other claims and processes that we're doing that we're putting out there on the public record. It's out there on the video. But we chose that one to do our most, this is the demonstration that I knew we would be tested on specifically to make sure that we knew who we were. And we do. We proved that. So I chose that building because our government needs to have that building's for starters. Because we need the space. And it needed to be an enclosed space. But then we also have, you know, again, Moors need domiciles. We get it. Do the demonstration. Do the demonstrations. We're putting the information on the public record. Be prepared to be tested. That's not scary talk. It's not boo-mongering, as you know, some might say it's boo-mongering. It's not boo-mongering because the remedy is there. If someone is running around yelling, "Oh my God, the sky is falling," and they don't say, "But you can stop the sky from falling by looking up and knowing that it's not falling." If they don't offer the remedy, then it's fear-mongering. But if the remedy is there, and the remedy is all of us, it's in our blood, then it's not fear-mongering. It's get ready for the greatness of the Moors. Watch how the Moors pass these tests. Watch how they kick these tests in the tail. No pun intended. Are there any questions or comments about that whole process of what the quote-unquote Federal Reserve and the fake Treasury, the fake Federal Reserve, the fake banks and all of that part that they're doing? Because they've decided now that, okay, we're just going to keep printing and buying, because every time we print, it creates more debt to buy. But we're printing to buy the existing debt. That's a never-ending spinning circle of debt. But again, that thing called the national debt also is a representation, a fake fraudulent representation, and see, no one represents the Moors. Our credit looks like that, except it's credit. And it has now spun into oblivion and unlimited credit. So now our job, what do we do now for those who need domiciles? Because see, we have some very lofty things going on, but then the Moors experience discomfort when it comes to the everyday application of what's really going on. Because see, that stuff was hidden from us before, it's not now. So how do we bring that all the way down to I need, someone saying I need a domicile? We do the study and the science on the domicile process the way that the hybrids did it. We take all of the forms and everything that they use to fraudulently claim it. We look at them, we pick them apart, we do the study like we've been doing on Sunday nights. We've been doing that. And then we create and craft our own sovereign affidavit in red in all lowercase letters. And then we do proper claiming. But proper claiming does not stop with claiming of it. Proper claiming continues with maintenance and care of it. And that's why we're moving into the inspection piece and the analytics of that. Because, see, we have Moors who claim 1,000 unit apartment complexes, but they don't even know how to go through and inspect one of them. They're thinking that they're going to call in 30,000 other Moors to do that for them, but we were taught, even in the corpse arena, we were taught that whoever is in charge needs to know everyone else's job. You can't be in charge of anyone or anything, and we're not in charge of anyone. You can't be in charge of a process if you don't know the process, which means we have to get out there and do it first, and then others can come in and assist. And they're not assisting us, they're assisting the government, the nation in its growth. So no one works for us. We all work together. But if you claimed a 1,000 apartment complex, you need to know how to maintain it. So what do? You look at what whoever it was that was maintaining it did, and you write out a protocol for that. In red and by affidavit, because what you're really doing is making the laws that govern the estate that you just claimed. That has to be done. We can't claim things without a plan of action, a strategy. And those are done by court action too. We put the court language that's on the screen, on the document, and say this is the protocol for this part of maintaining this section of the estate. So we've received, oh my goodness, we've received the same thing that we're doing with the domiciles. We've received that same back-end information for the conveyances and the whole sale of conveyances piece, so that we can properly claim allodially and sovereignly the conveyances. But again, when you do claiming of the conveyances, the right to travel has to be known by whoever's doing the claiming, because you got to know that part too. Just like they handed an insurance card, quote unquote, when there was a conveyance purchase under the feudal fraudulent corporate system. And then not only do you need to know that and what the law says about that, you also need to know how to properly mark your ship. That's sovereign tags, etc. And how to put that on paper, because we don't register our conveyances with corpses. Our government does that, which is all of us. And when we say something like our government does that, all that means is whoever bought the conveyance, whatever more, not bought it, whatever more did the exchange on the conveyance, needs to also create sovereign allodial title and a sovereign affidavit for origin. We have to know that stuff. Now, we're putting that in video, and that's what we use these calls for, is to start doing that type work, where we're honing in on the possession of the vast estate competently. And then we notify the corpses that we got that part done. All we're doing is just notifying them that this is done, and we have accepted that for value, and we'll take it. But it must be fully covered by our processes. And when I say our, I mean all more. So that is, and we, some of the Moors are saying, well, you all are going into the real estate piece. I'm dealing with a ticket. I'm just dealing with this. I'm still dealing with that part. That's okay. That's okay. Because you're going to deal with that part. You're going to do your affidavits. You're going to know that they're not talking to you. And you're going to deal with that debt that way. You're going to rebut everything they say. You're going to do it in red and all lowercase letters no matter what they send. You're going to do a court action on them. And then you're going to say, okay, I got that taken care of. Now I need a domicile. And the process is going to be right there waiting. So that's why we're going ahead and we're getting out ahead of all that's going on. We know that Moors are still dealing, some Moors are still dealing with policy enforcers and fake courts and all of that. Just know that they're not talking to you, and tell them, rebut what they're saying. And do it in red, and don't be afraid of the testing. You have a whole estate out here waiting on you. The ancestors are not going to leave you somewhere like that. We knew that when we went into the POW camp and came out by our own authority. We just knew, okay, where's the test? What are we doing? Oh, this? Okay, let's do it. Scared and all. But let's do it. Because we already know what's on the other side of this. We already know what's on the other side of this. Are there any questions, comments, wisdom that you'd like to add to what we're saying? And if you have any questions about the debt and the credit piece, Islam.
Islam, my sister.
Islam.
King Alassane Khalil Kanti. I'm presently in Houston, Texas, but I'm a king in West Africa. My question is concerning the development on Mother Gaia that we need to accomplish. I have several things in place in regards to agriculture. Within the Guinea Savanna Zone, sub-Saharan Africa is ripe for agriculture development, and I have the project basically in place to establish special municipal utility districts within an area of 1.6 billion acres of land called the Guinea Savanna Zone. That project would produce trillions of dollars in agriculture, and what I'm going to do is couple that with infrastructure design in sub-Saharan Africa for processing the agriculture product for consumption around the world from Africa, and then ship it with our own shipping to the various parts of the world. And in addition to that, there are several organizations that have shown that the greatest way to combat climate change is to, number one, desalinate water and pump that water up into agricultural operations on dry land, therefore absorbing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So we have an area of land in sub-Saharan Africa that's called the Great Grand Wall. It's 7,700 square kilometers of land that would be good for hemp production. They are presently using that land for hardwood trees, but we want to convert that land to hemp production and then process the hemp in all of the various products. There's over 1,200 products that we can produce from hemp, and they all would mitigate climate change, including buildings, carpet, cabinets, all of the building that we can do with the hemp product, in addition to the CBD oil and all of those things. So my question is, how can I, as a Moor, utilize our government structure to help facilitate the various components of those projects?
Okay. Just one moment. So the first thing that you would want to do is proper claiming of the land. Have you gotten to that point yet? I understand that you have the structure of the processes laid out in terms of what you want to do. How to go about doing that is first proper claiming of the land that you want to use. And so, are you familiar with how to do that?
Well, my objective with the special municipal utility districts is to work in conjunction with the Moors that own the land in Africa, where I would identify 100 to 250 hectares, a hectare being 2.5 acres. And on that 100 to 250 hectares, I would centralize the operation to mitigate 50,000 hectares, which is about 125,000 acres of land. So all of the investment goes into that special municipal utility district. We give that special municipal utility district the ability to build the houses and all of that for the workers, and the machinery to farm the land would go in and out from that central location so that we could deal with the civil conflicts and all of that which is presently going on, and hopefully be able to mitigate that as well. So I had set that up under trusts, which are independent business trusts that are independent of any of the organization that the corpses have, and those trusts are also recognized in that part of the world.
Okay. What the trust that you're referring to, okay, when you say that they're independent of any other thing that they're doing, how are they independent of them? What makes it so that it's independent from the corporations that are doing business as government there?
Okay, in Ghana, for instance, I studied the statutes in Ghana, and they have the support for a trust that's registered as a deed in the land records. And then that trust is a non-recourse trust. It's not taxable. It's like a foundation. So you simply write a trust in regards to the geographical area that you are developing, and then register that trust as a land record.
Okay. So who is it that's asking you, who is it that's saying, and I'm going somewhere with the line of questioning. Who is it that is saying that you need to register it as a land record? Who is it that gave that mandate?
Nobody. There's no mandate. That was just what I had determined at the time would be suitable for what I was doing, because I'm looking for it as a free trade zone.
Okay. Well, when you say free trade zone, and I get what you're saying, this is where I'm going with the line of questioning. In order to truly have it be what you, because I hear the intent that you want it to be separate and free.
Yes.
Right? I get that.
Mm-hmm.
The whole thing rests on whether it's separate and free, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
It has to. It has to. So in order to make it separate and free, the documents that found it, that are the foundation of what you're doing, must be sovereign, original, indigenous documents.
I agree.
So, you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So now, you already have everything you need in order to make that a very easy process.
Yes.
All of the documents that you've done thus far, they need to be done on government letterhead, in red and all lowercase letters, and that removes them from the capitalism system.
Wonderful.
So just look at all of the documents that you've done in order to register it as a land record and all of that. And then put those documents in red on Moorish government letterhead, okay? And again, the Moorish government is earthwide, so and you're the government.
Yes.
Okay? So put it on Moorish government letterhead, and I'll be happy to assist with converting the documents over, because that's what we were just talking about with the reversion of the state, and taking the documents that are on the public record and converting them over to government documents for the Moors so that we can use them.
Yes.
It's the same. We're already doing it. So we'll be happy to look through each step of the process of what you're doing, because we have to do the same things here. Some ones that we are reaching out to, and we've spoken recently with some who are familiar with the circles, is the Nation of Islam. They had their own land. They had their own co-ops where the members could receive a box of food each week, natural food grown by the nation each week for a minimal, at that time it was $7. And this is important with regard to what you're doing, because it's going to fall right in alignment with that. However, in order for what you're doing to truly be free and independent, it must be done originally and indigenous, because we're the true owners of the land, and you are, and those over there in the 200 that you mentioned are the true owners of the land. So they need to know about their nationality too.
Yes.
So that as they move forward, and we can assist with getting them the documents and everything. We have no problem with that. That's why we're here. And so what's more importantly too, with regard to that, and this is the part that is we've not seen this, but they've seen it over there in Ghana, where we have to use our own money.
Yes.
That's a part of keeping your project out of the jurisdiction of those and out of the control of those who might want to molest and violate it. It can be done very easily. You don't even need an army or guns. It can be done because, as you know, the jurisdiction is in the documents that you've done. The documents and what you say in those documents determines the success of the rest of the project, because you can move freely to do the things that you've listed. Okay? So that is actually the beginning of the answer to your question. Your question was, how can we use our government structure to facilitate those projects?
Yes.
The first thing to do is properly nationalize the land. And the way to do that is what I just said, putting the documents in red and all lowercase letters, creating sovereign title to the land, and that is done by those Moors that are over there. We already have that structure in place where we can give them the documents that they need.
Yes.
In order to do that. And the language that they use is going to be important in the documents as well. What language do they speak? I already know what it is, but what language do they speak for the most part?
Okay, well, in Ghana, you know, they speak English, but I'm in Guinea, which is a primarily French-speaking country, okay?
Yes.
And then in Kenya, I'm a chief elder. I'm Percival Olukamano in Kenya, and I have a relationship with the Maasai as well as the Kikuyu people there. Now, the important thing about Kenya is that the government there has embraced devolution, so they've already handed the economic powers down to the county level. And there's 44 counties in Kenya that are waiting for us to put together the economic structure for the development. Now, they need chickens, they need eggs, they need to know how to do wholesome feed. We also have access to the coastline where we want to do fish meal, do aquaponics. So all of those projects will be independent projects, and the structure for each one would be written by our staff. So I agree wholeheartedly with your dissertation on the importance of knowing these documents. And I've already committed myself to learning them to be able to structure them properly. So any assistance that I can get from the government would be great, because we are sitting at the epoch of a huge opportunity to actually turn this whole thing around on this planet. Not only the civil unrest, not only the spiritual attack, but the actual healing of the planet itself. We have a very good feel for that.
Yes, yes. So the reason I asked about the language is because we use ancient English in our documents, which is a conglomeration of English and French and all of the other languages together.
Yes.
Those that are the owners of the land, when they see the documents, they'll recognize them, because much of what they've done is written in ancient English.
That is correct.
That I know for sure. I've seen some of the documents. They're written that way. So let us work together to get that accomplished, because we need to use what you're doing as a model for some of the things we're doing over here. Okay.
I would be happy to. If I can assist and you would like to work, just let me know. Thank you so much for your time. I hope I've not imposed upon any of the others that have questions, but I really appreciate having this opportunity and learning about the Moorish, the whole Moorish movement. It's
Absolutely. Great. Do you have my contact information?
No, I don't. I'm sorry. But
let me give it to you. Let me give you my phone number and my email address, but so that we can connect.
Okay.
My phone number is 334, and the nation code is 1. So 1334. 294. 9828.
9828. Okay.
I am like Tajiri Bey, Islam.
All right.
So thank you so much for all that you're doing. We can definitely assist one another. You'll be assisting us also, because we can look at what you're doing and then recreate that here as well, because we need all of that in place. And it's just like our ancestors to have that happen now, because I've been speaking with some who have inroads on what even the ones who were doing that type of work, the Nation of Islam in particular, who had the land and the co-ops and all of that. So we're coming together that way.
Okay.
So
well,
I appreciate it. And
10 websites up. The best website.
Okay, go ahead. Yes, let's hear what they are.
The best website is Help Africa, Help America. And that website is HAFHAM.com. So it's H for help, and then AF for Africa, and then H for help, and AM for America.com.
.com. Okay. We're going to check it out also. Morris, give it a look and see, so that we can have yet another addition to our grand vision for our land.
Well, you know what? I gotta give all praises to the Creator, because I've been on this trek since 2008, including some of these nationalization documents, and I'm very happy that y'all have taken the time to research and find out exactly how this be laid out to make it easier for us. So I'm all with the ancient English thing, and it's just a learning curve, but I guarantee you I will catch up very quickly. Thank you so much.
Yes, Islam. When you see it, you will know that it's something that you can do very easily and simply. It's in fact there's ancient English on the screen, and it's phonetic. But the spelling, when you look the words up, those who speak French will see words that they use every day. Those who speak English will see words that they use every day, and they'll put it together etymologically.
I can see that. It's very simple when you really look at it the way that it's structured. So I appreciate it again once more. Thank you, in Islam.
Thank you, Islam. Are there any other questions, comments, wisdom that you'd like to add? Any of the Moors? You can just star 6 and bring forth whatever you want to add to our call today. Okay, Islam. So those who have not received their Moorish sovereign dollarium yet, you can receive your Moorish sovereign dollarium. We'll be sending out another group of Moorish sovereign dollarium. The Al-Moroccan American Exchange is caught up on the packets. Finally, we got caught up as of yesterday, so we've been working feverishly to get it done, and we got it done. So those who did not receive dollarium previously, you'll be in the next group to receive the dollarium, the Moorish sovereign dollarium, the gold-backed money that belongs to the heirs. It's controlled by us, it comes from us, and it is for us, for everything that we do. So with that being said, peace and grand rising to the sovereign, original, indigenous, natural, divine heirs, Islam.
Peace and grand rising. Peace and grand rising. Islam. Peace and grand rising.
Islam.
Wonderful call today, Empress.
Liar. Criminal.
Grand rising.
She
Grand
just back
rising.
as somebody dropped the
You're
house.
a liar and a criminal.
Okay, we don't know who that is. Islam. Peace and grand rising.
People are going to go to jail for
Islam.
Halloween.
Islam.